The man on the other side of the street. I've been delivering fast food for 6 months now. It's not the best job in the world, but it allows me to save some money, to move out from my unsupported parents' place, and it's easy enough. You pick up a bag, drop it off, repeat until your shift is over. No real thinking required. Most people don't even answer the door. They just let you leave the food at the front, send a quick thank you text, and you're on your way. But a month ago, I started noticing something weird during my late night runs. It wasn't anything big at first, just a guy standing across the street whenever I'd park. At first, I thought it was just another person out for a walk. There are plenty of those around. But then I realized it was always the same guy in the same spot, just standing there, watching. I'm not talking once or twice. This has been happening every shift, always in different locations. But there he was, across the street, just standing there, staring. He never moved, not toward me, not away, just stood there. I'd do the delivery, get back in my car, and when I drove off, he'd still be standing in the same place watching me leave. I didn't want to think too much about it. You see, all kinds of weird stuff happens whenever you work late nights, and you learn pretty quickly that the less you notice, the better. But after a week of this, it got under my skin. I started looking for him at every stop, expecting him to be somewhere at the scene, and he always was. One night, I was doing delivery in the suburbs, one of those quiet neighborhoods where the only sound you would hear is your own footsteps. It was just past midnight, and I was carrying a bag of burgers and fries to a small house on the corner of Maple and 7th. As I got out of my car, I looked across the street, and sure enough, there he was. Same guy, same dark clothes, standing on the sidewalk across from me, staring. I tried to ignore him, walked up to the house, and dropped the bag on the door like usual. As I turned around, I caught movement on the corner of my eye. He hadn't moved, but something about him seemed closer. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination. When I got back in the car, I checked the rear view mirror. He was still standing there, but now his face was clearer under the streetlight. Blood red crosses were painted across his skin, and those eyes, they were like holes, hollow, unfocused, and still somehow locked on me, making floods of shame wash over my unconscious. I drove off quickly, my heart pounding on my chest. I didn't look back. My girlfriend and I decided to spend the night together at hers, enjoying a rare evening relaxation. She's been incredibly supportive, especially since I've been working so much and saving to move out of my parents' place. I've been waiting for the right time to find our own space, where we can be ourselves without hiding or sneaking around. That night, we were talking about my plans, and I mentioned the strange guy that kept appearing. I was hoping sharing it to her would help me process it better. She listened intently and tried to reassure me it was probably just a coincidence or a freak who stayed up at late hours like me. I felt a little better after talking to her, but the uneasy feeling never quite went away. The next night, the same thing happened, but this time it was worse. I was delivering to an apartment complex on the edge of town. I parked by the entrance, grabbed a bag of chicken nuggets, and as soon as I stepped out, I saw him. Not across the street this time, but on the same sidewalk, standing under a flickering street lamp. He was closer. Too close. I hurried through the delivery, not caring about making sure everything was perfect, and rushed back to my car. I locked the doors the second I got inside. I didn't dare look up until I was driving away. When I did, he was gone. I should have stopped working nights right then and there, but money was tight, and the late night shifts pay better. And let's be real, I need every bit of it. It's not just about keeping my head above the water. It's about getting out. Getting away from my parents, their small minds, their small house, their small religious town. I don't talk about it much, but I've been putting every spare penny aside, saving for the perfect moment where I can finally move out for good, get a place of my own, a place where I don't have to hide every part of myself, where I don't have to sneak around or pretend like I'm someone I'm not. When I discuss the man stalking me with my girlfriend, she thinks that the reason I keep the late night shifts is just about money, but it's more than that. It's my freedom. Then, a few nights ago, something happened that I can't explain away. I was out on my delivery of the night, in a nice conservative neighborhood where the streets were mostly empty after dark. It was a giant house with a gate and a long driveway. I parked at the end, grabbed an Indian takeaway, and started walking up to the house. Halfway there, I froze. He was inside the gate, not across the street, not on the sidewalk, but right there, standing next to the tree at the edge of the property, watching me. My legs felt like they were made of lead, but I forced myself to push past him. I made the delivery, dropped the food on the porch, and practically sprinted back to my car. I don't even care if the guy was right there. I just wanted to get away to safety. As soon as I got in the car, I locked the doors and stared straight ahead, not daring to look around. My hands were shaking as I put the car in reverse, and then my phone buzzed. A text from my own number. Don't turn around. I felt the blood draining from my face. I was gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles are white. And then another buzz. He's behind you. I couldn't help it. I glanced at the rearview mirror. And nothing. But when I looked forward again, I nearly screamed. He was standing in front of my car, just outside the gate, his lips forming inaudible words, his hands stretched out towards the sky, his fingers splayed, palms up as if offering me to something higher, something far beyond my understanding. His face, painted with those blood-red crosses, twisted in desperation as if he was pleading for himself, or me. His lips moved faster, but his words wouldn't reach me. His eyes, those hollow eyes, they locked onto mine. The realization struck me hard, making my breath catch. He wasn't just standing there. He was performing some sort of ritual, a frantic prayer that turned the space between us into a sacred ground and a fire pit. I don't know how I managed to drive away without crashing. I didn't look back, didn't stop until I was home. I ran inside, locked every door and window, and sat in the dark, shaking. The messages haven't stopped, even though I've switched to day shifts and no longer see him. Every night, I get a text from my own number. They're always short and simple, but they all mean the same thing. He's still watching. When I parked outside my parents' house after another long shift, I got one more. Let me in. I don't know what's going to be the end of this. I don't know how to stop who or what he is. But I do know one thing. If you ever see a man standing across the street from you, watching, don't ignore him. And whatever you do, don't let him in. I'm sitting here freaking out. It's 3:17 a.m. and I just found my wife outside. This is going to be a mess and I'm still shaking, but let me explain it the best I can. So a bunch of years ago, we lived in another house. One night, I woke up in the middle of the night because I heard noises coming from the other half of the house. I quietly opened the bedroom door and immediately saw a light in my wife's study, which was situated next to the kitchen. The house we lived in was a few blocks away from the bad neighborhood, so my immediate thought was that someone had broken in and was going through the stuff in my wife's room, as my wife had come to bed with me several hours prior, and as far as I knew, she was still in bed. I crept through the house and was ready to confront the person in the room when I realized that it was my wife. In my still half asleep state, I just assumed that she was still in bed. Turns out, she had woken up and couldn't go back to sleep, and so went to her room to browse Facebook or whatever for a while. I had almost confronted my own wife thinking she was a burglar. Now in our current house, we have a screen door and a wooden door. The wooden door has a deadbolt on it, and you have to make sure that you take the house keys with you, because if you close the wooden door, you're not getting back in unless you grab the hidden spare key or knock on the door / window to get back in. I'm woken up by the front door rattling. I immediately grab my phone and pull up the security camera located right by the front door. To my surprise, I see my wife standing there, kind of shivering. It's definitely her, because we've been married for over a decade, and I know what my own wife looks like. She's dressed in the same clothing she wore today, a red top and black pants. 100% her. I don't know what she's doing outside, but she is out there for some reason. Confused, I roll over, and there's my wife, fast asleep. Remembering the incident in our last place, I use my phone screen to shine the light on her and confirm that it's definitely her, and she's definitely in the bed. At this point, I'm really confused. I get up and make my way through the house to the front door. As I walk to the lounge room, our cats look up at me, half asleep. Normally they're super curious about stuff that's going on outside, and I would have thought that hearing the screen door rattling would have caused her to be at the door, trying to see what's going on. But it's like she hasn't heard a thing. I stand by the door and call out, "Who is it?" "It's me. Hurry up. Let me back in. I'm freezing. I went outside because I heard something, but I forgot the keys inside." That absolutely sounds like my wife. Accent, intonation, knowledge about where her set of keys are, everything. But I'm not convinced, because I've just seen her sleeping in the bed with my own eyes. "Hold on a second," I tell her. Now I'm heading back through the house into the bedroom. I wake up my wife and say, "This is really fucking weird. You have to see this." I open the camera app and show her the front door. She's still at the door, looking around, wondering what I'm doing, because all I need to do to let her back in is turn the handle and open the door. My wife says, "What the fuck? When was that recorded?" I tell her, "It's not. This is live. You're standing outside by the front door. I just went down there and asked who it was, and your voice told me it was you, and that I should let you back in because you were freezing and you left your keys in your bag." My wife gets up and peers through the bedroom window. As you can just see the front door alcove from there. She gasps and pulls the curtain shut. She turns around, and I'll never forget the look she had on her face as long as I live. She's terrified. "That's me," she says. At this point, I'm freaked the fuck out and wide awake. I'm speaking to my wife, and I'm physically touching her while trying to peer out the window with her. But there she is, standing outside in the very outfit she wore today. Same hair, same glasses, same everything. We walk into the lounge room and I grab the big torch I have. We stand by the door again. "What's your name?" I ask. She tells me her full name, including her middle name. She's correct. "What's your birthday?" She tells me. It's also correct. "What did we have for dinner tonight?" She tells me this too, and tells me that I cooked it. This is right as well. I can hear my real wife standing next to me, trying to control her breathing, and she's scared out of her wits. I nudge her and whisper, "Ask her something only you would know." After a moment to steady herself and think of something, she speaks. "When we last stayed with my parents, what change had my dad made to my old room?" There was a pause. "Who is that?" the person outside said. "Why aren't you letting me in?"
You know it's me. You're starting to freak me out here. Who is that inside with you? Is that a recording of me? What's going on here?
I said, answer the question. What change has been made to your room? Another pause, then finally,
There was a second bed added as Max and Damien sleeping there while visiting Mom and Dad.
there's an audible gasp from my wife next to me. Now we're both freaked out. I grab her hand and lead her back into the bedroom and turn the lights on. We're still awake, watching the cameras. The other person walked towards the backyard, presumably to grab the spare key, but that was about 40 minutes ago, and I haven't seen them since. I'm too scared to go to bed, because I'm scared that this person, who knew everything about my wife, will find the spare key and enter. I don't know who the fuck they really are, or what they want, but I'm not sleeping tonight.